All right, everyone, buckle up, because we're diving into a topic that's, well, let's be honest, always on our minds. Feeding kids.
It's a universal puzzle, isn't it?
Totally. What to make? Will they actually eat it? And are we making the right choices for their health? Not just now, but for the long run, too.
It can feel like a lot of pressure.
Right. Which is why I love the research we're digging into today. It's like someone took all the latest findings on children's nutrition, threw in some serious aha moments, and said, time to rethink what we thought we knew.
I love that because it is about so much more than just the basics. We're going beyond eat your veggies and exploring all these interconnected factors that influence how kids eat and how their health unfolds.
Okay, so first up, and this one kind of blew my mind, it turns out that when kids eat might be just as important as what they eat. We're talking chrono-nutrition, the whole science of how our body's natural rhythms interact with food.
Like our bodies have this internal clock that's primed for certain things at certain times.
Exactly.
It turns out digestion is one of those things. This study in the International Journal of Obesity found some interesting stuff. They saw that kids who ate their biggest meal earlier in the day, they tended to have healthier BMIs.
Even if they were eating the same amount overall.
Even if they were eating similar foods as those who ate a big meal later on.
So, like, front-loading calories could be key.
It's possible. Instead of that huge dinner, maybe a larger lunch is the way to go.
It really makes you rethink how we structure family meals, you know?
Absolutely. And the study, it emphasized that it wasn't just about the food itself, but the consistency of the meal timing.
So it's not just one day of eating a big lunch. It's about making it a pattern, a habit.
Right. It's like aligning with those natural rhythms our bodies crave. And that can make a real difference in how we actually process food.
Okay, so timing is huge, noted. But let's get to what's actually on those plates, right? Because this next insight really made me rethink some things. You know how some kids are just drawn to carbs, pasta, bread, you name it. Well, what if they're not actually craving carbs, but something else entirely?
You're talking about the protein leverage hypothesis.
The one.
Yeah, it's been studied a lot in adults, and now researchers are finding similar patterns in kids. It's wild, actually. Kids might instinctively eat until they hit a specific protein target.
Wait, so you're telling me my kids, like, insatiable love for pasta might actually be a cry for more protein?
It's possible. Their body might be saying, I need more protein, those building blocks. And if they're not getting enough from their diet, they might end up over-consuming other things.
Like those beloved carbs.
Exactly. Like those beloved carbs in an attempt to reach that protein goal.
Okay, that actually makes a lot of sense. So instead of, like, banning carbs altogether.
Which never works.
Never. It's about making sure they're getting enough protein throughout the day. Was there research on this in kids specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a recent study in the journal Obesity that looked at this exact thing in children. And they found that when kids ate meals with a higher proportion of their calories coming from protein, they naturally ate less overall.
Interesting. So it helped with portion control, basically.
It did. And it had a positive impact on their weight management. Which makes sense, if you think about it.
So instead of banning carbs, it's maybe like strategically placing that chicken skewer before the pasta. I'm picturing my grocery list already.
It's about shifting that balance, right? And recognizing that protein might be more satiating for kids than we realize.
And speaking of things that can affect how much kids eat, let's talk about sleep, or the lack of it.
Oh, the sleep struggles are real.
And every parent knows that struggle. But what I found fascinating is there's a direct link between sleep and eating habits.
100%. And it actually goes way beyond those late-night snack attacks we're all familiar with.
So those late-night cartoons aren't the only thing making my kids raid the pantry at 9 p.m.
Nope, not even close. There's actually research on this, and it's fascinating. This study in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine found a really strong correlation. Kids who weren't consistently getting enough sleep, they actually ate more calories throughout the day.
And not just a little bit more, right? Like a significant amount.
Significant, and they especially went for more snacks.
And we're not talking about carrots and celery sticks here.
Right, more like the siren song of the sugary drinks and the processed goodies.
It's like a double whammy for these little growing bodies.
Exactly, and we all know how crucial sleep is just for their general mood, focus, all of that. But now it's like, okay, we can add this to the list, right? This is a major player in their eating habits, too.
Okay, adding enforced bedtime to my to-do list. With even more urgency. But let's shift gears a little bit here to another big challenge, which is, picky eaters. And this next bit of research got me really excited because it feels so actionable. Have you heard about sensory-based food education?
Yeah, it's super cool because it really moves past this idea that getting kids to eat is just about how things
Right,
taste.
it's more than just taste buds.
Exactly, because kids experience food with all of their senses, right? They're thinking about the texture, the smell, even the sounds of cooking.
Yes, it's a whole sensory
It
experience.
is, and there's research showing that if you actually engage all of those senses, it can make kids more open to trying new foods.
Oh, I love that. So instead of just putting the food in front of them, it's like getting them involved in the whole process.
Totally. There was this study in public health nutrition where they found exactly that. The kids who got to experience food in this multisensory way, touching, smelling, even listening to the sounds of food being prepared, they were much more willing to try new things.
It's like they're already invested.
Yes. And they also got better at actually recognizing different tastes and textures. So it's like they were training their palates.
Sneaking in those lessons without them even knowing it. Instead of dreading dinner, it becomes like an adventure. I love that.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be complicated, right? Like just having your kids help wash the veggies, talk about how crunchy that celery is, even just letting them smell different spices. It all adds up.
Love it. Okay, speaking of what's going on inside those little growing bodies, this next bit blew my mind. We're talking about the gut microbiome.
Oh yeah, the gut microbiome. It's a hot topic these days.
So hot. But this research links it to children's cognitive development, their brains.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating area of research, and for good reason, because
Right.
we used to think of the gut as this very separate thing.
Like what happens in the gut stays in the gut.
Right. But now we're realizing just how interconnected it is with, well, everything, including the brain. And it's not just about having a generally healthy gut. Scientists are discovering that specific types of bacteria actually play really distinct roles in brain development.
So not all bacteria are created equal. Tell me more.
Not even close. This study in Nature Communications, it really highlights this. They took a look at the gut microbiomes of infants and toddlers, and what they saw was those with a wider variety of bacteria actually scored higher on cognitive tests.
So diversity is key. And not just like on the plate, but in those gut microbiomes too.
Mm.
Makes you wonder, are there certain bacteria, like superstars, that we should be aware of? Ones that are like especially good for brain development?
There are definitely some that stand out from the research, like this study we're talking about. They found that a specific bacteria called Egerthella lenta was particularly linked to better cognitive function in those kids.
Egerthella lenta. Okay, I'm adding that to my mental grocery list. But seriously, this makes you think about prebiotics and probiotics in a whole new light, right?
100%. And yeah, we're still learning so much about the gut microbiome, but this research is basically saying what we feed our kids, it's not just impacting their tummies, it's impacting their growing brains too. It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely mind-blowing. Okay, and speaking of long-term impacts, this last bit of research really takes the cake. We're talking about epigenetics. You know, the idea that what we eat, especially during those early years, can actually influence how our genes express themselves.
It's wild, right? Like we have some control over how our genes actually play out.
Right. It's not all predetermined. So this research is suggesting that early nutrition can leave a lasting impact on our DNA. And that's impacting not just our health, but potentially even future generations.
Yeah, and researchers are finding more and more evidence to support that.
Wait, so you're saying what a pregnant woman eats could impact, like, her grandkids' health down the line?
It's possible. It really highlights how important those early years are. We're talking about laying the foundation for lifelong health.
It really puts a whole new spin on that saying, food is medicine, doesn't it?
Right. It's not just a catchy phrase.
And so, wow, where does this leave us? I feel like we've covered like a year's worth of nutrition classes in like one episode.
We've done a deep dive for sure, but I think the takeaway here is actually really empowering because we've seen how timing, proteins, sleep, those sensory experiences, the gut microbiome, even our genes, they all play a part.
It's complex.
It is complex, but that also means we have so many opportunities to make a positive impact.
So true. It really drives home that feeding kids is about so much more than just like getting food into their bellies. It's about creating this positive food environment. It's about understanding their individual needs. It's about being patient with the process. And honestly,
Yeah.
maybe even having a little fun along the way.
100%. It's about those small, consistent choices that we make each day, and trusting that those little choices, they can have that ripple effect for years to come.
It's a long game. Not just about what's on the plate today.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, here's something I want you to think about. Knowing what we know now, How might we approach feeding the kids in our lives just a little bit differently? What changes feel, I don't know, exciting, doable?
Such a good question to leave us with. This deep dive has given us so much to chew on, and we hope it sparks some new ideas for you too.
Right.
We'd love to hear from you. What surprised you? What are you excited to try? Keep the conversation going because, hey, we're all in this together, right?
Yeah.
Until next time, happy and healthy eating.